Hello, everyone, and welcome to our GeekFest Filmmaker panel. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you guys are watching from home, our virtual Comic-Con at home that we're trying to do. So we have a great panel today of a bunch of our award-winning filmmakers who have submitted and we should be touring around the country right now with our GeekFest Comic-Con thing, but we're doing it virtually this year. Strange times. I wanted to thank all of our panelists for joining us today, and wanted to do a quick introduction. Maybe starting with Damon, just tell us a little bit about who you are, what your project is, and anything else you want to share with us.
Sure, thanks. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Damon Wellner, and my film is Hood, a Star Wars story, and it's a stop-motion animated toy cinema is what I like to call it. I've been making films and videos with my action figure collection for over 20 years, and it's the most fun that I have, so that's what I like to do. Yeah, most of them are just up on my YouTube channel.
Very cool, very cool. Sophie.
Hi, I'm Sophie Black. I'm in the UK at the moment, and excuse the hotel, I'm on the road because I'm about to do only my second shoot of the year because it's been a crazy old year. I'm the director of Growing Shadows, the Poison Ivy fan film, which was a lifelong dream come true because I've been a big Batman fan since I was a kid. So yeah, love that film.
Great. Joshua?
Hi, Joshua Weathersby with Endless Mile Studios, and we have made a Superman fan film called Laundry Day that reimagines the first meeting of Clark Kent and Lois Lane in a laundromat of all places.
Mm-hmm. Good choice in t-shirt too, by the way. Brian?
Hey guys, I'm Brian Burton. I'm an actor and director in New York City, and my film, The Festival, is, as you can see right there, right there it is, Push the Point. It's a short film musical comedy about online gamers as they work through the squad-based mission, and it journeys them through trying to get through some online toxicity, some super fandom, and the futility of trying to have an argument on the internet. So really excited to be here and be a part of this. Yeah.
Jeremy.
Hi there, I'm Jeremy Merrifield. I'm the writer-director of Balloon. Balloon is it's a short film about a teenage boy who discovers he has superpowers. It's a very classic story in that way, but I think under it all, it's really about, what does it mean to be a hero? What does it mean to be a Superman? And how do we choose what's right and wrong?
Awesome. I'm just going to dive right in because I really want to talk about you guys' films. They were all so amazing, well-produced, and so different from one another. Jeremy and Brian, you guys mentioned a little bit about the message that you had behind your films. But I noticed there was a message, there was a theme to everyone's film here. And I just want to see, explain what drove you, what motivated you to create these films and spread the message that you guys were spreading. How do you want people to walk away after watching your movies?
I'll go. So for Push the Point, one of the main, I guess, instigators of us doing the film in the first place was a bunch of us that co-wrote it, co-created. We perhaps maybe played too many video games in our day, maybe, if that's a thing. And we play a lot of Overwatch is what we would play, which is a very co-op or a multiplayer online game. And, we experience any kind of Call of Duty or Fortnite or whatever. A lot of people do work together to achieve the common goal, that they have in the game. And it's fun and it's a great experience, but there's always a handful or more of people that kind of create an aura of toxicity that just for even maybe the sake of it or for their own reasons unbeknownst to us, who knows, whatever. But the point is, there's kind of a growing sense of toxicity, we feel like, in like internet culture. And of course, you know, more recently, it's even escalated with cancel culture in a massive way this year. It's to where it's almost like cancel culture was not really a known phrase, I feel like, until this year in the mass way that it is, for sure. And in some ways there's justice to it, but in other ways it kind of can take a mind of its own and kind of destroy the reason why we play these games together, to have fun, why we enjoy these certain areas of fandom. You know, like there's a sense amongst super fans that sometimes, you know, arguing about some things within the same thing that they enjoy, like, you know, this thing that they really want is becoming a movie, but it's like, man, characters' eyes were not green in the books, you know, and it's like, but we get this cool thing where we can enjoy it together, you know. This kind of dichotomy of these things was one of the reasons, and also we, being New Yorkers, wanted to do it as a musical, so. I figured that would be kind of. We hadn't seen a video gaming musical comedy about this before, so we're like, at least it will be fresh, if anything. Yeah,
Fresh in a '90s sense. It was totally.
Yeah, that's right. Fresh in every way.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a challenge that we have with the anonymity of the internet, right? There's trolls coming out, and everyone's got an opinion, and yeah, it's become this new terrain that we have to kind of socially navigate. So
sometimes it's not even that their opinions are necessarily different at the core, but the inability for us to listen enough to each other to where we might be kind of in agreement, but it's the combativeness of the thing itself, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So being able to really just listen, and maybe we're all on the same team together anyway and fight this fight. So yeah.
For sure.
Brian, I was amazed that you were able to fit so many conflicting personalities and points of view into the same song.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we wanted to have it also not just like one side versus this side, but with each of the characters, how you know, one's this and then switches, and kind of, so, you know, it's not just two-sided always, because there really is no two sides to any issue. So kind of,
and it was really impressively edited with all of it happening.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we knew it was going to either live or die in the edit, for sure. You know, it's a musical and we're not physically dancing, but we wanted there to be that kind of dance with the images on the screen within the edit, which is why we did it kind of did it the way we did it. You know, I only wanted it to be a 4-way split screen only a handful of times, you know, but beyond that, to really be moving and interplaying to help narratively tell the story we're trying to tell. And in a way that in the end, hopefully you get the message. Hopefully, you know, you leave being like, maybe think about it, but also just like had a good time. You know, it feels kind of like an SNL digital short in a way, kind of for a reason. So, you know, we want to impart a message, but not to beat you over the head with it at all, for sure.
I really appreciated the production design, the music video aesthetic. And
thank you.
As an editor myself for over 20 years, definitely the editing.
Thank you. Yeah, we actually shot the entire thing in my apartment in Washington Heights. Believe it or not. Yeah. It was it's like in Upper Manhattan, you have a little more space, and so we have a 3-bedroom with a proper living room as well. So we took all 4 of those rooms and really changed them all to each kind of reflect the characters' personalities, but also, you know, feel like their own separate spaces. But of course, in those few moments, like I said, when it is a 4-way split screen, that the color palette still feels cohesive, and it's the same film. Once we figured out the color palette, myself and Brittany Ray, who is my production designer, and also the girl who played my girlfriend in the film, once we kind of figured out that color palette, that was when it finally came together. We bought went to get paint chips at Lowe's, and we're laying them down because we couldn't start buying anything until we figured out, you know, what is the main color per room and what are the minor colors per room that are also the main color in another room. So we could, it was kind of a puzzle within itself. Once we figured that out, it was a lot of fun to then just kind of go hog wild and decorate. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what did you guys do with all that furniture afterwards? Because it's such eclectic like furniture.
Well, my room, which is the girls' room, that wall still painted that color and everything, and I just ended up keeping a lot of stuff. I was like, I don't really want to undo this. You know, it's kind of nice. I don't know. I like it. I can like it. We did paint some walls, and not that I didn't want to paint every wall. For those walls, we tried to do. Or for those rooms, we tried to do something else that popped. Like the room that my character was in was the living room, and so I bought a separate couch cover for that IKEA couch, and then tub dyed it. I bought this dye, and I filled the tub with this thing and dyed it, which was like the biggest, DIY I've ever done for sure. And that couch is still for sure that color. It's gonna be that color until it's dead.
How about the tub? I feel like I've tub dyed once before, and the tub never recovered either.
I had to be real careful. I took a shower curtain and just like lined the entire tub and prayed.
Oh, smart. Pro move right there. Yeah.
There's still some caulk between the tiles that are still a little bit blue on like the bathroom floor, but you know,
bye security deposit.
Do some mega bleach later. Yeah.
Bleach helps. Bleach helps get the deposit back. Yeah.
Jeremy, you want to talk a bit about yours?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm laughing at Brian because I'm originally a New Yorker. I've lived there for about 20 years, and I've definitely shot in my tiny New York apartment many times. Each time swearing I would never do it again, and then doing it again. Basically, the American Film Institute kind of pulled me out west, and Balloon is my thesis film at the American Film Institute, and also kind of just something Brian mentioned with the toxicity of our culture. I think inside of the fan culture, inside of, you know, geek culture, or whatever you want, fanboy culture, you know, just the notion of the word fanboy culture has an implied sort of, you know, sexism to it. And I think, you know, when we were making this film at the time, and, you know, in the news, you were seeing things like, you know, Harvey Weinstein, and I mean, like role models like, you know, Bill Cosby, and even things like Tom Brady cheating at the Super Bowl. And I was watching my 12-year-old nephew going into middle school, and it kind of triggered me from my own experiences. And I kind of realized that he didn't really have role models. He didn't have heroes. The heroes that we have, a lot of times, you know, this culture is about finding heroes. You know, we find these sort of role models, but they're not even real. And it's like, how do you choose to do the right thing when you actually are confronted with the reality of things? And, you know, I think a lot of times with boys, I kind of did a lot of research. I researched talking to a bunch of kids, and I kind of read I joked that I read every mommy book that was out there. I was reading all these books about how to raise boys because I was trying to understand what was going on. And I think, you know, I think the thing with boys is that we're very often teaching them to have power over things rather than to empower them. And I think power versus empowerment is a big part of the superhero ethos. And I think, you know, I look at the comic books that I grew up reading, and it didn't always devolve into just punching through your problems. It didn't always. It was very often about how Clark Kent would open the door for Lois Lane. Not to say chivalry is the only way to do it, but it was simple empowerment that was also part of the character. And I think it was about that. Like, the journey for his superpowers in this story was really about, you know, can he choose an empowerment, which was like a lightness, a sort of like the ability that let him float, let him soar, over and having power over things, which, you know, caused destruction and, you know, would break things. And, you know, and I think the gun violence problem was very much connected to that. You see, you know, everyone goes, oh, it's a gun violence problem. We need gun control. We need to help deal with our guns. And I'm not going to jump into that mix of the gun violence thing, the gun control debate. But what I will say is that every time we have a gun issue in our schools, it's a boy. And so he's bringing this element of power that he's into a classroom to say that he has power over his problems now. And I think that's kind of what we wanted to explore, was like, what if you have a kid, and for me, this is my nephew, who really wants to do the right thing, but everything is telling him he needs to have power over things. And I think that so often is a big part of why we have so many of these toxic masculinity headlines. And I don't love that term either. I don't love this term fanboy culture. I don't love toxic masculinity. I don't love the chivalry, but I mean, these are sort of gendered, things. But I think we do have a toxic problem in our culture, and how can we address that? And how is it affecting boys? So
that's really well said and very deep. I think you did a great job discerning like the empowered versus powering, and the way that you made these sort of parallels with what we deal with in society, with what he went through. I thought that was really, really great. Josh?
Yeah,
it's incredible film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. It kind of harkened back to like things like The Boy Who Could Fly, for me. Oh, good. Okay, cool. I'm glad to know that might have been intentional. That's awesome.
Yeah. Actually, to be honest, I didn't remember The Boy Who Could Fly. I saw it when I was a kid, and when somebody had seen the film, they mentioned it, and I was like, I feel like I've seen that. And then I went back, and I was like, oh, and it's so funny how we are what we eat, right? Like, it's like how the zeitgeist tells your story for you through you in some way. So yeah, that's one of those things, right? So. Yeah,
I feel like for people who feel like the message of that movie might be missing in today's world, I think you really brought it back. So kudos to that. Definitely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And great performances. It must be really hard to get performances out of child actors, and you did an amazing job.
Yeah, he was incredible. I mean, that kid is something else.
I mean, all the kids we had, and especially Sam, Jonah Barris, who's incredible. And we can say we knew him because now he's on Pen 15, and he's like doing really well. He's like up and coming young Hollywood or something like that. I don't know, but I think all the kids were really incredible actors, and I think that's a big thing. I mean, I had never worked with kids before, but at like family get-togethers every Christmas, I'm like the child whisperer. Like I'll go sit in like the living room, no one's in there, and all of a sudden the kids will start coming and crawling all over me, and like then the dogs will come, and I'm like, what's going on? I just wanted some peace. So I'm pretty good with kids. So I thought maybe I could maybe do this with kids. But I think one of the things that we did that was really helpful was with the script is we actually wrote a really bad version of the script, and that's what we gave the kids and their parents. We knew we had good actors with the kids. We weren't sure what would happen with the parents. Would they over rehearse them? Would they become like robotic, show kids? So we gave them sort of like I guess it's like the subtext version of the scene, like the character wants to say I love you. In our version of this script, they got to say it, and then we kind of would get on set, and we were like, yeah, you get the scene. You're in the subtext of the scene. Now it was like, what would you actually say? And we kind of were able to pull back a lot of things, and it ends up being a much sort of like the prison of masculinity ended up kind of being there, because like so much of those very earnest, emotional, sentimental things are, you get kind of squelched behind a gritted jaw when you're a young boy. And I thought that kind of, I don't know, that ended up working really well for us. And the kids just had such great instincts about that. They knew, oh yeah, I'm not going to say that. And I was like, fine, don't say it then. Like, why, so that worked out really well.
That's super cool. What was the like, did you think of that just randomly, or did you hear about that somewhere, or did someone recommend it to you and like, that sounds like a good idea? Or like, what was the,
I think I kind of fell upon it. Like I kind of knew, I kind of knew that I was wary of stage parents. Like I mean this, and we have great stage parents, I should say. Like I mean, right. some of our biggest champions who were on set and taking care of so many things for us, and that was an essential part of it. But I just didn't know. I hadn't met them. I didn't get to audition them, so I think I was just wary. Like I had seen that before, where it's like it becomes like a robotic performance, and I love giving actors rehearsal, and I think they should have as much time with the material as possible. I'm not one of these, as a former actor myself, I don't believe in like springing things on actors. But I do think you want to empower them. Just kind of like, that's basically all directing is you kind of just empower everyone to do their best work. I mean, like in my opinion, like it's very often, if you're doing it right, you just get out of the way. Because there's so much better. The department of Sam was played by Jonah Barris. I wasn't playing him, so I shouldn't get in and nitpick at it. But I was trying to allow him to have the best experience on set, and so I thought if it was too static because they had been over rehearsed, then he wouldn't get to be shocked. He wouldn't get to feel all of the things that I knew he was capable of because I had done all these improvs with him in auditioning. So I just thought that would be a better way to work. And also, I mean, as an actor, I think that would be fun. Like I love being in a scene and seeing what happens. And like, you know, there's an element of like surprise to it. So I think there's, you know, that's kind of why we approached it that way. But we kind of fell upon it. I knew I didn't want to have him over rehearsed, and I knew I didn't think we could avoid that. So I was like, well, let's send this, and then we'll see what happens on set. And I don't know, yeah. So yeah,
I think really cool.
That was a fantastic approach.
Yeah.
It really creates a sense of authenticity and in the moment, and especially drawing it from, you know, child actors who may not have the same develop their methods or their techniques quite yet. I think that was really fantastic.
Yeah, I think tone is such a tricky thing to get, and like that's probably the thing I spend the most time on as a director. It's like, you know, with all the different departments, and I always talk about to my actors like they're the head of their department. Like, you know, I want them to make choices, like just like the production designer gets to make choices on palette, and you know, they all come back to me and we coordinate it together. But I think my biggest job is to make sure the tone is in alignment. Right. And I think that also really helped get the tone right, because if you had one kid rehearsing with their parent and another kid rehearsing with a parent, we might end up with two different tones, as opposed to if we kind of all get to like, you know, sort of let it gel together on set.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Josh, you want to tell us a little bit about yours?
It was a pretty amazing experience all the way around. You know, I've been walking around with that idea in my head for a while, and I had a conversation with my writing partner, Leah Welch, and she had I explained the idea to her, and she had come up with so many like great additions to how we could kind of work with these two characters. And it was really important for me too to have some authenticity for the Lois's voice, not being a woman myself, and Leah having spent some time as a journalist, that kind of helped. But for me, what was important to me was crafting a version of the Superman, Clark and Lois dynamic that we haven't seen on screen, at least for a long time. I mean, there's a lot of like really grim, dark kind of superhero movies out there, and you kind of feel like when you see like Clark or Lois on screen in those films, you don't really see them as Clark and Lois. Like Clark is still Superman, you know, he's still this larger than life kind of mythic being. And I kind of wanted to strip some of that away and see a more human side to him, or at least the side of him that is working at pretending to be human.
Yeah. I'm just going to jump in and say, I really loved that part of it. I feel like the thing isn't that Superman is really Clark Kent, and it's not Clark Kent is, you know, the disguise is really Superman. It's not Clark Kent. He puts on this to be an icon, but he's really a human being. And I felt like that was really such a big part of, I don't know. I really liked it a lot.
Yeah, same.
Thank you.
Sophie?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the decision to make a fan film was one that was kind of not taken lightly, because none of my other films are fan films. And I think that quite wrongly, if someone makes a fan film, they're maybe judged in a different way to other films. So it was something I so wanted to do, because I've always loved the character, like I said, and I felt like Poison Ivy had not been done justice in cinema and in TV, and I'd spent 30 years waiting to see her done justice. And I remember the Uma Thurman version very clearly from the 90s, and a lot of people would just see Poison Ivy as sexy and sexual, and just a lot of stuff I saw was her either being uber evil or throwing herself at men, and it was a frustration for a while, and I felt like if I'm not going to see this version that I want to see, I'm going to be the person to make it. And luckily I teamed up with Ashlyn Diath, she plays Ivy. She's also the producer and writer of the film. And we got talking, and when we were working together, and discovered that we both loved her so much, and we both had that frustration of not seeing her done right. And like Poison Ivy, you know, she is sexy, but she owns her sexuality. She's also incredibly powerful, incredibly intelligent. She's a scientist. And for me, growing up with that character was so, she was an idol for me in a way, even though she wasn't real. It was amazing to see someone like that. And I wanted to see her treated right. Also, the fact that she cares about the planet, which people forget to do sometimes. And if we don't have a planet, then there's nothing else. That's literally it. That's the bottom line. There's no planet, there's nothing else to worry about. So, like, I always felt like she was judged harshly, whereas I see her as a heroic character. I see maybe she doesn't do things like she should, but her motivations for saving the planet and taking down corporations and all that stuff, I've always kind of cheered for. And, I'm a big environment nut myself, and that's the other reason I love the character, and I wanted to see her done right. And also, just on a very sort of geeky Batman loving level, I've always liked the dynamic between her and Batman, and I think that's also something we haven't really seen. So getting a story and setting it in that era of Ivy's story where she's trying to fight for justice and trying to fight for what's right, but she's also got that great underlying sizzling connection to Batman is something that I really wanted to put on screen. So we did.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. You really turned her into this complex, three-dimensional character. That's more than one of the things I love about these movies and these fandoms is that it's not only just diverse, but it is so empowering to like all different aspects and different types of people with different backgrounds. And the comic book world has amazing female characters who have been
so good
background the same as like the male characters. And that, I think that's one thing that's very distinct in the comic book world. I think there's
definitely, but it doesn't translate well when it comes to films and TV. I think now we're getting a little bit, I mean, I loved Captain Marvel. I thought she was done perfectly. But like, I grew up not only watching Poison Ivy, but also X-Men and adoring Rogue and Phoenix, Jean Grey, and just thinking these are amazing, powerful women, and they're full of muscles and everything, and they fought alongside the men, and they were never like overly feminine.
Right.
And yet it doesn't for the last few years, it hasn't seemed to translate well, and I've seen so many awful versions of these characters. And
I feel like it's so dependent on like the director.
Yes.
The studio.
The studio, yeah.
The individual's like vision on how they want to see it brought to life makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, even Wonder Woman. Like, I was very excited to see Wonder Woman, and I love Patty Jenkins, and I think they did a great job on the film. But I was a little disappointed the fact that just before she goes onto No Man's Land, she shakes her hair down and makes herself look pretty. And I'm like, just get on with the fighting, please. And it just, the fact they have to look pretty when they're trying to get a job done. The new Birds of Prey had the great moment that I loved when they were all fighting together, and I can't remember her name, excuse me, but one of the characters had to put her hair up because she was trying to. Yes. Yeah, I love that, because she was fighting and it was getting in her way, and I was like, oh, a woman is actually she's actually being contained within real standards right here. She's not expected to be perfect all the time. So I love that bit. So.
That's a personal pet peeve too, because as a girl with long hair, it's like I can't imagine fighting.
Yeah,
that would be in my face. Like the whole
just you put it up. I have a fringe. It's worse. So.
Damon, a little bit about yours.
Well, I feel like my film is sort of an anomaly here because I love hearing filmmakers talk about color palettes and tones and all this serious filmmaker stuff, where my film was, and most of my films are made strictly for fun, and I just make them here at home in my little laboratory, and my challenge was to try to tell a tragic story comedically and make everybody laugh along while people are dying, and because the entire premise of my story is to tell the backstory of the Star Wars universe's most favorite background extra, which is this guy, Wilro Hood. And he's a guy who runs by in Empire Strikes Back, and the only reason anybody ever noticed him was because he carries this, and if you're my age, you recognize this as a ice cream maker that was sold on infomercials in late night TV. So when they made an action figure of this guy, it was sort of out of a joke, and he was named Wilro Hood after the the Hood Ice Cream Company on the East Coast. And, but so for me, it was a challenge to try to tell the story of why did he grab his ice cream maker when he only had 10 seconds to evacuate from Cloud City. And initially it was just supposed to be a 30-second Robot Chicken style sketch where he hears the evacuation call, he runs out the door, but then he comes back for his ice cream maker. And that was it. There was not going to be any explanation. There was not going to be any anything more, because it was just supposed to be a deep cut for the Star Wars fans who get it and forget everybody else. But then it got me thinking as to why would he grab what would be the emotional need for him to grab his ice cream maker in that moment. And so I created the whole backstory around it, based mostly on ideas that I had wanted to do visually. Most of my filmmaking is what can I accomplish for hardly any money and make it fun to watch. And then I kind of reverse engineer the script to fit the visual elements that I want to try. But then the extra fun thing about this story was that most of it takes place in a flashback. And so the whole zoo story with the animals getting out and the Rancor monster attacking and all this stuff, it was just ideas would just occur to me, and I could just sort of go wherever the story led, and I didn't have to. All I really knew was that it had to end up in total chaos at the end, and then flash back to the initial setup. So for me, I didn't have a lot of the restraints that a lot of other filmmakers have about scheduling, trying to feed a bunch of crew and cast members. I had a few people who lended voice. They're very talented voice actors, but other than that, I did everything myself except the music. And so for me, my filmmaking journey is very different from everybody else's, and it's kind of get it done however you can, and there is no message, there is no point. It's just to have fun. And in terms of like the toxicity, everybody knows that the Star Wars fan universe is probably the most toxic. So to be able to create something for that ugly bunch of damaged people is extra tough. What was the other thing? I forget. I had one other point. Maybe I'll remember it later.
How long did it take for you to create this? Because
that took 7 months.
7 months. Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, those are the very first.
Thanks.
So I have a whole wall right here of Star Wars action figures, and those are the first movies I used to make.
Are they in the package or are they out of the package?
They're out of the package.
Toys you played with.
Yeah. They're old, and I played with them, and that's one of the first movies I ever made was with Star Wars action figures and Legos. They inexplicably were part of my universe. It's incredible. Like the all the detail that you have. I mean, having done this, I mean, the ability that you have with comedy, and it's so cool what you were able to create with it. So,
but again, a lot of that stuff was very much. I mean, you might notice that I didn't even put any effort into making the mouths move, because I mean, it ended up, the idea that most of the lines of dialogue in the film are callbacks to other Star Wars lines. And so that was just an idea that sort of just built on itself when I just realized that practically every moment could be, I could just dig and find a line of dialogue that C-3PO said or whatever and just have somebody else say it here. And it all, most of the ideas in the movie were last minute things that I just kind of like, oh, try that. Oh, it worked. On to the next thing.
But it's comfort food, and it does have a soul to it, and it has. I mean, I think it has a it may be buried in there, and I think that's the best kind of medicine. But you do have some hopeful, aspirational, inspiring things to it, and I think that's fantastic. And I loved it. So
thank
you.
It
was very fun to watch. Very fun to watch. Yeah, I love how you kind of revolved all of this around this ice cream makers, like an Easter egg.
Oh yeah, well that's the other thing, and of course since then, my whole film has been ruined by The Mandalorian, because The Mandalorian has retconned that the ice cream maker into being a safe.
Mhm.
And that actually makes sense. So I'm like, ah, dang it. You know,
This is better.
well, back when they made the character, Hasbro is very into retconning all the characters themselves, and everybody seems to be a rebel. So the Hasbro backstory of this was that it's some sort of a hard drive or something, and this is a rebel, and he's a rebel, and so it's just, I hate all that. Hasbro wants to make everybody a rebel, and it's just.
But that's the power of the fan
Sometimes
film.
it's just an ice cream maker.
Yeah.
You can retcon things yourself and make it like whatever you wanted it to be. That is the power of the fan film, is telling the story you wanted to see.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, and now it occurred to me that I should make a sequel where he finds Luke's hand and gives the lightsaber to Maz Kanata. So that's going to be that's my ideal for the sequel.
I would love to see that. You
yeah.
starting on that right away.
Wilrow should be a hero. Now it just kind of ends where this movie just kind of ends in the middle of chaos. I didn't resolve anything.
I think that's cool.
Yeah, I wanted to talk more about Easter eggs, because when you create these very like niche genre specific audience sort of films, I feel like you can't help but drop little inside jokes or Easter eggs that only like the most diehard fans will pick up on. Do you guys want to talk about some of your favorite eggs that you've planted?
We've got loads in there. There's the opening shots of the film, you see all the things in Ivy's cell, and there's notes that her and Killer Croc wrote to each other from when they were friends. There's a shot of a card which has a leaf on it, and that is how she escaped in one of the comic books. I'm not going to list them all because there's absolutely loads. There's little sound cameos as well. There's a bit towards just before the last third of the film where you hear voice in the background, and they are all voice cameos. There's different DC characters in there as well. So yeah, we've just put loads in there because we wanted this to be the film that the fans were waiting for. So we wanted to make them as happy as possible.
Love it.
We used a lot of Easter eggs to really ground the film and make it feel like it was part of the larger DC universe. We went so far as to even make commercials. Some of which you only actually hear in the film and don't see until like the post-credit sequence. But we made commercials for like Big Belly Burger. We made a Wayne Tech and a LexCorp commercial. I mean, of those, I got to say like the Big Belly Burger is probably my favorite in terms of like Easter egginess, because it's a really deep cut. It appears a lot in Superman comics. And it's just, it's like one of those things, if you're kind of a real diehard fan, you recognize it. But man, RJ Tucker killed it with the voiceover for the LexCorp and the Wayne Tech commercial. He kind of, for Wayne Tech, he was trying to channel Alfred. So that in and of itself is sort of a double Easter egg. And yeah, I mean, there was just so many like little cool moments. In one of the news reports, there's when Lois is watching the soap operas, there's another nod to Batman, which is the appearance of the Dark Knight in Gotham City. And it's still like early in the Batman Superman sort of career, but I like the idea of sort of teasing, the other DC power couple, not just Lois and Clark, but Superman and Batman. So kind of like keeping that tied in was kind of cool. And the LexCorp, of course, was sort of a tease for what we also did post credits with the appearance of Lex Luthor and trying to make the world larger.
Everything's beyond the world beyond.
Definitely. I mean, there's a few more, but those are my favorites for sure.
I loved Big Belly Burger. I was like, that was my favorite. I was like, it was brilliant.
Oh, it fills my heart with so much joy. It feels
my Superman action figures are next to my Star Wars one, so yeah, Todd McFarlane one up there. I love that one so much.
Nice.
So yeah. Yeah, we didn't have Easter eggs per se, but like there's a lot of things in the texture of the world there. The Balloon is based off of a feature film that I'm in the process of making, sort of delayed a little bit right now with the pandemic, but it's called Spirit Week, and so there is sort of background of like that they're in Spirit Week at the high school, like that the homecoming game is coming, and then in his room that strangely, it was like all this work that we did, but it's kind of dark in his room, but there's all this like rights that we did to get like certain comic book properties up there on his walls and different things, so get, like so that his world was saturated with this sort of community, like that this is a big part of his worldview. So yeah, but we don't have a universe.
Right.
So
Created your own universe. That's great.
yeah, the Ballooniverse. We'll work on it.
Ballooniverse.
I like that. I like
And
that.
and our thing, I mean, we didn't really have too many, I guess, Easter eggs as truly as Easter eggs are, because of a similar reason. It didn't really exist in that kind of universe, but it was more about our universe that we live in right here, and pop culture references to different things within our fandom universe. But one thing we I guess, I mean, aside from little elements here and there in the set that we just would hide because we had some Funko Pops that were stuff around and whatever, but like in the lyrics, one thing we kind of tried to do was, I mean, I wouldn't really call it Easter eggs, but we wanted to reference things without necessarily hitting them on the head. Like, we never wanted to say any Star Wars characters' names. We never wanted to say we never wanted to say any, and not for like licensing reasons or whatever. We just didn't want to. We wanted to. My lyricist, Alex Kosea, is just he's one of the most the wittiest guys, and when we were developing all this, it's his style and my preferred style as a consumer, to have it. I don't want it to be laid out all for me, and it. I like the smart audience approach, and like, if they'll get it, they'll get it. You know what I mean? We want to make it accessible, not in the way that sometimes you get an indie filmmakers like, what did that film mean? They're like, what did you think it meant? And I'm like, don't tell me that. Like, we wanted to make it accessible, and so like, hopefully people you would capture it. But so I guess that's more not really necessarily an Easter egg, more than it is a certain tonal element. I don't really know. Right. Yeah.
A lot of like the reference that you had within is like, I mean, it's gamer specific too, right? Like, if you play a lot of games, especially in like an online community, I think you understand that that, I guess, relationship that you have with like other gamers, and like chemistry that can happen when you're just listening on headphones.
Right. You're like, you're with them, but you're not really in the same room with them, but
right.
Yeah, we wanted to try to have, if there was any kind of gamer talk within sort of the lyrics, not to, we at least didn't want it to be massively inauthentic, because that'd be like, what's the point? We also had these characters that were also widely diverse, because we wanted to kind of cover the diversity of the gaming community itself, which is a lot of everybody. People that are, guys, some that are girls, some that are like totally still living in their mom's basement, some that like have a normal adult job now, and they just want to come back home and like, have a moment of peace and enjoy themselves, we kind of wanted to really hit the diversity, because we feel like the gaming community is much more diverse than it's often represented. But
sure.
So good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about music a little bit, because I think a lot of you guys really put a lot of thought into the sound design and the music. And I mean, Brian, that's an original song you guys had, right?
Yeah,
and
it is.
The sequence that you had, I mean, that was so great. Jeremy, the music in yours, even like, it really brought another element to it. I like all of you guys. So what are your thoughts on like the music? Did you kind of do nods with what pre-existing soundtracks, or did you create it on your own? Tell me about that, because music's such a huge part about storytelling.
Yeah. I love music, so I'll just throw it. I mean, I could put music through every aspect of it, and I have my acting background comes from being in the Broadway theater community and having been an actor in like shows like Miss Saigon and like big musicals. So I love music. I love when the music can sing for the character. I think a big part of taking storytelling from theater to film has been where I can find restraint in that, because it sometimes. I think when you're in the theater, you're in the space. Music can be very much integrated into the energy of the room, whereas when in film, I think sometimes it can be a little bit jarring. Sometimes, even though I happen to love it, I've learned that audiences can kind of bristle with it. So getting the music right was really hard for this film. And I was really lucky to get this composer, Ali Helmline, who he's an incredibly talented guy. I mean, he can just do so many different styles. I think we kind of ended up with like a modern synth kind of Philip Glass kind of thing, which kind of felt right. It kind of had this sort of like contemplative idea for this character's like own self-searching, but it also had this modern sort of like, it wasn't just true classical music in that sense. It was very much like his own like sort of modern, like I really felt like, as much as I love real instruments, I was like, we actually have to cut the real instruments and we have to get more electronic, because it has to be very modern for him. So yeah, I don't know. Music is one of the hardest things though, because you'll do whole passes on the score, and you have to do another pass that's completely different, and it's just one of those things. Like there's like no rules. There's nothing that you can like. You don't. Every story I've worked on, like it's like you think you kind of figured out how you'll approach music the next time, and that doesn't work for the next story. So it's pretty brutal, and I kind of really empathize with composers. It was the first job I ever wanted in the film industry, was to be a film composer. I wanted to be John Williams so badly. I thought that was like the coolest thing. I wanted to do big fanfares and huge music, but I think it's just really tricky, and I empathize with composers, because it's pretty brutal. Like in the industry, you hear about composers getting fired all the time and new people coming on, and the turnover. And I think it's because there's just not really a paradigm to how to approach music every time, and so it just makes it hard. So
yeah, because you were talking about how you wanted to focus on setting the right tone, and I think you really succeeded in that. It was really good.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to give Ali a lot of credit for that, because he really found so many cool ways of like he got this metal drum that kind of sounded like because he went to the set and he like banged on like the lockers with a drumstick, and he was like, this is cool, like I like this sound. So he found this metal drum that kind of, he would record it, and he found this metal drum that kind of sounded like that. It was like a big old chemical drum. Like it's not even like an instrument drum, and he beat that to sort of like make the lockers be a part of the score.
So creative.
Cool.
Yeah.
Josh, you started your movie with a very energetic sort of score. Tell me about that.
Yeah, there was so it's really easy with a lot of these fan films to just sort of borrow like pre-existing music from like other properties. We were taking kind of a different approach, like trying to come up with a wholly original story, and at the same time trying to come up with a wholly original score for this film. I had the opportunity to work with two really great composers, both of which are really good friends of mine, two of my oldest friends in California, in fact. Robert McCracken, who came up with all of the like the music you hear for like the news reports and stuff like that in the background media, and then my friend Will E, who came up with a great original score. I told him to like imagine a world where John Williams' Superman score did not exist. And we listened to a lot of like Holst Planets and stuff like that, which was some of the original inspiration for that. And and we referenced a lot of that kind of stuff, and we went back and forth, and he came up with something that like to me sounded like if John Williams didn't exist, this would be like the Superman sort of theme. But more than that, I had this like kind of pop song in the beginning of the film, and I wasn't sure, and I didn't we had tried trying to contact like the people about like licensing that, but Will, like, he, to his credit, he was like, no, get rid of that. He's like, I will come up with something original for you. We talked about a couple of things, and literally within one day, he had this idea. He kept recording like little bits of it into his phone, and by the time he went home, and I think like 4 or 6 hours later, he had played every instrument, sung the song, recorded it, and wrote it all within less than a day and a few hours. So, and you heard it. It sounds amazing. Like, we wanted to do a music video for it.
Yeah, that was one of the cool things about, like, it threw me off, because when we hear of Superman, like, the music is still iconic, these theme songs for these like major franchises. So I kept thinking, like, where's this theme song? When's it gonna kick in? So it's cool that you took that approach.
Well, yeah. Also, we didn't want to like tip our hand right away with like what kind of film this was going to be. I mean, it's in a fan film festival, so and we do have like the little explanation at the bottom of the screen when you go to log on and watch it. But for people who didn't know, who might just be like sitting in on this, or if we were doing this at conventions, and people had just walked in and it was like the next thing up on the slate, like it would be interesting to sort of gauge people's reactions and see how long it took them to realize that they were watching a Superman movie. I wanted it to start like kind of like a romantic comedy, like any other romantic comedy, a meet cute, if you will. And the music really lent itself to that, and it really helped elevate just everything we were trying to do. It was like everything just came together so well.
Yeah, it was like not Superman's theme song, it was Clark Kent's theme song.
Yes, exactly. At the end, you get the Superman theme, but at the beginning, you sort of get like the Clark Kent sort of.
Yeah,
like, what is he listening to on his headphones right now? What's on his playlist?
Oh man, Damon, Sophie, anything to add with that?
Yeah, I mean, I just following on from that, we definitely did consider, like, we wanted to make sure we kind of did hark back to some of the original scores and that kind of thing, purely because, again, we wanted to think about what the fans were expecting and we wanted them to feel really satisfied. So it was kind of a balancing act about how much of the old style score we put in, the stuff they've come to expect, and the new. And shout out to Tom Hawke, who is the composer on this, because it took us a while to find him. But what we did was we listened to all like the Danny Elfman scores and the Nolan scores and trying to find a balancing act, something that sounded like Gotham and sounded like Batman, so that the fans would feel like, oh yes, I'm home when they're watching it, but also making sure it was Ivy's story and making it more feminine. So what we did was we found the music we wrote was in a similar kind of vein to Danny Elfman and Nolan, but whereas their scores have very big bassy notes, particularly the Nolan Batman have big bassy notes, we essentially took that same type of music but replaced it with higher pitch notes and something a bit lighter and more feminine. So it's the same genre, but it's telling the woman's story, and also because it's set in Arkham Asylum. It's an asylum movie. I've always wanted to make an asylum movie, and so we wanted to make it a bit more horror. Which is why the piano and the lightness of those notes, it's more feminine, but it's also more creepy and it's haunting and it echoes the dripping of the pipes. And so it was kind of that balancing act, but also we wanted to make sure there were character motifs. So the majority of it is Ivy's score and it sounds like her, but then we did bring in some of the big bassy notes for when Bruce has his clear going into Batman moments, and also for, I won't say it, but there's a cameo at the end, and she had her own sort of theme as well that was quintessentially for that character.
I really like that, because like it gave it the tone of like the Batman the Animated Series, which definitely had a much more gothic,
my favorite
kind of tone. And you know what, I can tell it definitely is true. And that's what I really liked about your piece.
Thank you. Yeah, Tom Hawke, amazing composer.
Mine's just a little different because, like I said before, my filmmaking style, or the way I get things done is a little different. I had no composer. Obviously music is such an important part of the Star Wars universe. Everybody's familiar with the melodies and the themes for the different characters. So if I wasn't going to be able to have that, people would definitely notice it missing. So maybe hopefully this could be helpful to fan filmmakers out there who need Star Wars music. I was able to find another YouTuber who makes instructional piano videos of all types of music, not just Star Wars, but it's done in that sort of video gamey player piano way, where you see the notes coming down like a video game and the guy's playing them on the keyboard there. And I got his permission to use his music in my videos, just for crediting him. He didn't want any money for it. And so that was a great way to, and the cool thing was he didn't just do specific, well, he did specific scores, but he also did scores from the trailers and things like that, which were a mix of different things and not necessarily what you've heard before as far as arrangements. So, it was a fun way to get legal music that I could use, that hopefully other people can do as well. This guy is named Samuel Kim. He goes by A Tin Piano on YouTube, and his videos are amazing, just as far as the music and the instructional value of them. But his help to me was immeasurable. I've used him in a couple of my videos.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like music goes with Push the Point, I mean, obviously it's a large part of it.
Script.
It's in terms of like the orchestration part of it. Edison Hong, who's one of our co-creators in creating the content of the story, and also was our composer of the song. I think we had a lot of talks, and his suggestion to go a little more a little more, not fully electronic in, you know, it's like kind of a techno sense, but electronic versus like live recording of actual instrumentalization in a room, was because thematically, you know, we're playing a video game, so we thought having it stay a little bit more electronic based in a way was something we wanted to keep with. But also thinking back to what Jeremy talked about, how a lot of people, it can be very jarring when someone suddenly breaks out the song. I was very conscious of that the whole time when putting together the script, and also when directing it and the edit as well, that we try as best we can to gradually move into the music, into the singing, so that it's not so much like out of the blue this person's singing, and it's just like I wanted to keep people in any way I could in the story and in the characters, and tried to eliminate as many things that would toss them out of the story as I could, including even when we're censoring the language, that the things we use, the sounds are thematically appropriate, and that they're fun, but also help kind of tell the story and help with the musicality of things as well. I mean, I think like Jeremy's, music is everything to me as well. And in terms of, I think the musicality of anything, even when I'm directing this piece, or when I'm acting in something, whether it be this piece or anything I'm acting in, I always kind of think of things more from a musicality standpoint. The musicality that, you know, whether it is a musical, and the musicality while you're singing, but the musicality of the silence, the musicality of the moments in between. You know, the musicality is basically just another word for pace. You know, so. Yeah. I think that the musicality is something that is always occurring from the time a movie begins to the time a movie ends. And, you know, whether the beats and the moments in between, or the way that it's being delivered, whether you're talking fast, kind of like I am right now, some Jesse Eisenberg going on, you know, or whatever, or like whether it's a slow kind of, you know, something else that's it's always ingrained. So a way to make it present and to utilize it as a storytelling tool. Whether very literally like we did, or in the moments in between, you know, like you said, the moment where we broke it up, had that moment with the girlfriend, it was a moment to further the narrative of what they had been talking about, so we could kind of further the story without having to plot every single bit of how they got to this next further point, but also to give you a moment to breathe, and also set up a moment for a recall joke later on at the end. You know, it's music is very fun. Yeah.
And you mentioned you have a background in musical theater, is that right?
I do. Yeah.
It definitely shows. I mean, it was so cohesive and told the story, took us on this emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, I'm not
as a kid, so I used to do like drumline stuff when I was in school. So that pacing, I think, is kind of just ingrained in me.
I gotta say, man, it was just really masterfully done. I don't always love musicals. Musicals are very hit or miss with me, and I was not sure I was going to enjoy your film, but you won me over by the end more than any other film in the competition. I was like, wow, this guy is fucking great.
Thank you.
Excuse my language.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we want to keep it kind of poppy and fun, and like, I love the classical musicals. We didn't want this to be, you know, golden age Broadway. It thematically wouldn't have made much sense, for sure.
Yeah, I think too, like you also kind of throw the gauntlet down and say this is a musical pretty early on, and I think sometimes with musical style specifically, it's just like you kind of have to like throw it down and be like, this is what it is, and you're either with me or you're against me, but like this is it. And I think when you don't apologize for the style, it's amazing how your audience just was like, okay, you're confident, I'm gonna follow you, because it's kind of like that. You feel like you're in good hands when a filmmaker is that confident, and you're ready to just go with it. Also, just to that point of musicality is another word for pace. That's such a great. That's like writing that down. That's a really good thing. I feel like when I've been able to find restraint with music, when when I'm like, I'm not going to score a section, even though I'm like, I want to score everything. I think very often I've learned that there is a score in your film, and it's the diegetic, the sound in the space that's there, right? That, you know, it's like, whether it's just the locker doors opening, or, you know, and how we can then use that as an endpoint for music, like, or, you know, someone's zipper, or like, you know, like the sound of like them, you know, clicking their pen, and how all those can be part of your, you know, your score, even before you, even without having a proper composer coming in for that part. Yeah.
Totally.
So
I get that.
I'm going to say we are getting towards the end of our hour, and this has been so good. I want to give you guys all a chance to let everyone know where they can look you up, social medias, where they can watch your films. Yeah, let's start from the top. Damon.
Okay, my YouTube channel is youtube.com/probotvideo, PROBOT video. On Twitter and Instagram, I'm Probot, but the O's are zeros. I know it's confusing, but don't bother any of that. Just go to my YouTube channel and enjoy my other videos. I made music videos and other things in the last year that I'm proud of, and I'm focusing now on an instructional videos telling people how to do their own homemade special effects like I do.
Cool.
Great. Sophie.
Yeah, I'm Sophie Black Film on Twitter and Instagram. I also own a production company called Triskel Pictures. Yes, it's very hard to spell. So TRISKELLE. Triskel Pictures on YouTube and Instagram, and there's lots more great fantasy and female-led stuff on there as well.
Great, great. Joshua.
Well, we are the creative collective known as Endless Smile Studios. You can find us at endlessmilestudios.com, Endless Smile Studios on YouTube as well. Our Instagram is at Endless Smile Studios. Twitter is at EMStudios_, and Facebook is Endless Smile Studios.
I think there's a little bit of feedback here going on.
Get a little bit of echo.
Yeah, just a touch. I'll put that on. Brian.
Okay, this is a part of the music. Let's just consider it. So for Push the Point, you can go to pushthepoint.com. We keep updates there. On Instagram is where you can really follow Push the Point in a way. We just use a hashtag for Push the Point. Most of the stuff I put out is mostly pushed out from me directly. You can just follow me on Instagram at just the @ and just my name, Brian with a Y, Burton. And also I have my website for acting and directing, primarily mostly just acting right now, is brian-burton.com, because someone took brianburton.com and I cannot get that website back.
That was me.
Jeremy. Mute themselves real quick.
Yeah,
while we can
everyone else will mute.
Everyone mute, except whoever's speaking. So everyone but Jeremy.
You can check out .com, social media. You can check out my production, DRE, and I'm pretty much on forums at Jeremy. Come out and chat on socials. Get back to you soon.
Okay. I think the feedback might be on your end, Jeremy. In any case, we at GeekFest will be pushing out everyone's social media information as well. So just follow us on there. We'll be pushing things, letting you guys all know where you can watch these films and get in contact with these wonderful people if you have further questions. I am Jackie Dallas. I have been your moderator for the session. My Instagram is JaxDallas, JaxDallas. Also JackieDallas.com. I think we are wrapped here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks to Bill at GeekFest.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.